Some truths don't scream. They whisper. They show up in half-finished sentences, trembling hands, eyes that won't meet yours. And when they arrive, they don't ask for permission. They simply change everything. Emma sat there, frozen. The cafe around her melted into white noise. The scent of burnt coffee, the clatter of forks, none of it mattered now. Deborah had just said 5 words that didn't feel like an answer. They felt like an identity theft in reverse. "I named you Leah." Emma blinked, searching for something familiar in the woman's face. She wanted to scream, why? She wanted to demand to know why no one told her, why her brother was even her brother, why it all had been a lie. But her voice cracked when it finally emerged. "You named me?" Deborah nodded, slow, cautious, like she was holding something too heavy for one person. "Leah Ann Langston, born 1994, Mercy General. You were mine. And so was he." That was the moment the pieces began to slide into place. But they didn't form a clear picture. They formed a puzzle, with edges missing. Deborah's voice trembled. Her coffee remained untouched. She began, almost as if reading from an invisible script. "I was 23, I was a mess. I had nothing, no money, no family that gave a damn, no stability. And I had you. Then, a year later, I had him." She glanced out the window, away from Emma. "The fathers were different. I didn't want 2 kids. I wasn't fit to raise them. But abortion, no, I couldn't." Emma said nothing. Deborah continued, slow, raw. "I tried, I really did. I kept you both for 3 months. But we were sleeping in shelters. I got sick. I couldn't afford formula or even diapers. So I went to a place." She looked up now. Her eyes were sunken, as if reliving the weight of the decision. "It wasn't legal, not fully. It was called New Horizons Family Transition Services. Sounded like some government-subsidized program, right? But it wasn't. It was a front, private, discreet, cash only. New Horizons wasn't a registered agency. It operated in the shadows, and it served one purpose: quiet adoptions, quick disappearances, paperwork that disappeared with time. Deborah's hands shook. They promised it was safe, that you'd go to good families, that one day maybe it's when you were old enough you could come find me. I signed the papers, and that was it. Emma stared at her, voice brittle. "So how did we end up in the same family?" Deborah hesitated. This was the part she'd clearly dreaded. "I don't think that was supposed to happen," she whispered. "I gave you up on different days. You were taken in by 2 different women, I was told. One was in Illinois, one in Texas. I never heard from them again." Emma leaned forward. "But we didn't stay there. We were taken in together, raised together. Same last name, same school." Deborah's face went pale. "Together?" That word struck Deborah like a slap, because it meant that someone, somewhere, they had either lied or made a very deliberate decision. Deborah reached into her bag and pulled out a small notebook. She flipped through it and found a crumpled paper, a receipt, old, yellowing, half-faded. Emma glanced at it. "Intake summary, NHFTS, Derby, so forth, 12 to 94. Name, Leah Ann L. Status, placed. Below it, another, Derby, so 3, 95. Name, unnamed. Mail status, placed. Nothing else, no signatures, no addresses, no traceable links. I thought I was protecting you, but maybe I just threw you into someone else's game." Emma stood up, her breath short. She was shaking now too. "So someone chose to put us together, and didn't tell us who we really were." Deborah looked broken. Or they didn't care. That was the new mystery. Who had joined their paths, and why? Because adoption agencies, real ones, follow rules, protocols, family history reviews. But this had the fingerprints of something else. A cover-up, a repackaging of identities, a manipulation of bloodlines. Emma left the cafe with more questions than answers, and one cold, paralyzing realization. Someone orchestrated their lives, and that someone never wanted them to find out. Back home, she and Alex sat across from each other in silence. Emma finally broke it. "She said she named me Leah." Alex looked stunned. He pulled out an old folder from their shared box of childhood files. In it there was a certificate, a hospital bracelet, an unmarked envelope from years ago they'd never opened. Inside it, a copy of Alex's intake form. And at the bottom, original first name, Eli. They stared at each other. Leah and Eli. They had never been Emma and Alex. Not at the start. They had been renamed, rewritten, reshuffled, and the people who did it left no fingerprints. But there was one clue left. In Deborah's notebook, on the inside back cover, a scrawled name, barely legible. H. Corman, intake officer. With a number, area code 713, Houston. Emma grabbed her phone. Her hands trembled. She dialed. 1 ring, 2, 3, then a voice. "This is Henry." She froze. Alex stared at her. The man on the line repeated, "Hello, who's this?" And then the call dropped. That voice, the calm, casual tone. It didn't sound like a monster, but sometimes monsters don't. Emma sat silently, staring at the web of names, dates, and blurry profile pictures now strewn across her laptop screen. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of truth slowly crashing down like waves against a weakening levee. Gedmatch had returned another partial match, a woman named Marjorie Whitlow, estimated to be a second cousin. Alex had received a similar match. This wasn't coincidence. The shared relatives were lining up. Piece by piece, the jigsaw puzzle was taking shape, and the final image was anything but comforting. Each discovery came with a name they didn't know, yet each one tethered them tighter to a shared lineage neither of them had asked to be part of. "What if we weren't just half-siblings?" Emma whispered into the void of her room one evening, voice brittle. "What if it's worse?" Alex, on his end, was spiraling deeper into documents, birth indexes, and adoption records, spending hours calling courthouses, searching registry logs, scanning through microfilms from state archives. They were in the thick of genealogical detective work, what professionals often call genetic triangulation, used by law enforcement in solving cold cases. Only this time, the suspects weren't criminals. They were just two people in love who hadn't known better. Emma, after some digging, finally managed to reach Marjorie on a video call. The woman was in her late 60s. She appeared kind, grandmotherly, but also suspicious. Emma didn't reveal everything, only that she and Alex were adopted, and that Marjorie had shown up as a cousin. Marjorie hesitated. Then, in a soft, broken voice, she said, "There was a family scandal, years ago. My brother James got someone pregnant, a girl from the next town over. It was kept quiet. She was sent away. We were told the child was given up for adoption, but there might have been more than one child." Emma's heart dropped. More than one. Back to back, Alex had reached out to another match, a man named Leo Anders, aged 51, who lived in Montana. Leo didn't know much about his biological parents either. He was a product of a closed adoption too. But he had tested positive as a 25% match to both Emma and Alex. "Could we all be quarter siblings?" Alex asked. Leo replied, "No. If I'm showing up that strong with both of you, and you're already that close, you're probably full siblings. I'd bet my farm on it." The words hung in the air like smoke. Full siblings. It wasn't just a hunch anymore. It wasn't a nightmare that might pass. It was now a verified biological possibility. But even worse than the confirmation was what came next. Emma, unable to sleep, dove deeper into archived hospital records, finally tracing a document. An old newspaper clipping from the summer of 1995. A birth announcement, one that listed twins, born to a woman named Carol W. The name matched an early lead Alex had discarded as irrelevant. The babies had been born in separate hospitals, transferred due to medical complications. 2 names were given, but the second name was marked only with a dash. Baby B, No name listed. Her hands trembled as she saved the article. Her stomach turned. Tears pooled in her eyes. They hadn't just been half-siblings born from the same donor. They had been twins, separated at birth. The next morning, Alex called. "Emma, I found something," he said. Emma didn't answer. He heard her crying on the other end. "You found it too, didn't you?" he asked softly. Silence. And then she whispered, "I wish we hadn't." The gravity of it all hit like a silent bomb. Their connection had never been some uncanny coincidence or one-in-a-million accident. It had been fate, cruelly orchestrated by the cracks in a broken system, a pair of twins, adopted out separately, raised in different cities, only to unknowingly find each other as adults and fall in love. They were the very definition of a hidden tragedy. The question now wasn't just what happened, it was, who knew? Because someone had, and they had kept it secret. Their next step was to confront the people who had built this illusion from the very beginning, even if it meant tearing open old wounds, even if it meant burning the only bridges they'd ever known, even if it meant learning that love wasn't the only thing they'd been lied to about. Emma couldn't sleep. The dim glow of her laptop painted shadows on the walls as she sat motionless in her apartment, the article still open on her screen. Baby B. No name listed. The dash now felt more haunting than any name could have. They had been twins. She and Alex. The truth, though chilling, brought an eerie clarity. The chemistry they felt, the sense of familiarity, the deep emotional resonance. It all made sense in the most horrifying way. Their bond had never been romantic fate. It was genetic recognition. Two halves of the same origin, unknowingly drawn back together. And now, that bond felt like a chain. Emma kept staring at the image in the article, a grainy photo of the hospital wing in 1995, a nurse holding two swaddled infants. No names, no details, just an outdated smile, a frozen moment in time. That had somehow shaped two entire lives. She opened her email, began typing. Her hands moved with purpose, but her heart screamed in protest. She paused, deleted the subject line, typed again. Everything had changed. Meanwhile, miles away, Alex wasn't sleeping either. He sat in his car outside the home of Margaret Donahue, his adoptive mother. The porch light flickered above the door. He hadn't told her he was coming. He hadn't told anyone. Inside his coat pocket was a printed copy of the GED match report and the hospital birth article, the final pieces of the puzzle. He had every intention of knocking on that door, demanding the truth, but something stopped him. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the sudden realization that the woman who had raised him, who had sung him to sleep and nursed him through pneumonia, might have known all along. He looked down at the photo on his dashboard. Him and Emma, smiling on the beach, wind in their hair, no weight in their eyes. That version of them was gone. Now, there was only the reckoning. His phone vibrated. A message from Emma. She believed someone had known, that someone had kept it from them, and she didn't think it was an accident. Another message followed. She had dug into Carol W., the birth mother. In 2014, Carol had filed a legal motion to contact her son. The court denied her. His records had been sealed. That son was Alex. Emma explained further. They had known he was her child, but they hadn't told her where he was. They had let her believe he was gone. She sent one more message. Carol was still looking for him. The idea struck hard. A woman, his biological mother, had spent decades searching for him. While he wandered unknowingly into a relationship with his twin sister, Emma's next message arrived. There was one more thing. She had found her. Carol was alive, and she wanted to talk to them. Alex's grip tightened on the steering wheel. After all this time, after this catastrophe. His phone rang. Emma. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Finally, she asked what they should do now. Alex looked at the porch light again, took a breath. They would find out everything. But the truth waiting for them wasn't just about their birth. There was a reason the adoption records were sealed. a reason both families had kept silent, and what they were about to uncover next would change not just their lives, but the legacy of everyone who had touched it. Emma arrived at the address listed on the court filing, a quiet, older neighborhood in Tacoma, modest homes, trimmed lawns, and that strange silence only suburbs could produce, the kind that whispered normal while hiding everything else. She hesitated at the gate. The house was small, pale yellow, chipped paint and sun-bleached blinds. An old wind chime clinked nervously in the breeze. A woman appeared on the porch, late 50s, graying hair pulled back in a bun, thin, tired eyes. But something familiar lingered in her expression, an anxious sort of warmth, the kind that waits every day for a knock that never comes. This was Carol, their birth mother. Emma froze. Carol's eyes locked onto hers, uncertain, until Emma stepped forward. Carol recognized her without asking. She had been waiting for this moment her entire life. They embraced, a long, trembling embrace. Equal parts grief, relief, and devastation. No cameras, no perfect soundtrack, just raw silence between two people bound by loss and unknowable time. Inside, Carol poured tea but didn't drink it. Her hands shook as she unfolded documents, newspaper clippings, even a few Polaroids from 1995. One of them showed her younger self, eyes full of life, arms holding two newborns, one marked A, the other B. She placed them on the table, gently. She had begged the hospital to let her keep both children, but they had said she was unfit. She was 19, no job, no family. The father long gone. They said it was better this way, that if she ever tried to interfere, she could lose any right to future contact. It hadn't been abandonment. It had been a system. A sealed, invisible system built to erase connections under the banner of protection. They had taken her children and separated them, intentionally. Emma asked why. Carol couldn't answer, until she received a letter. She slid it across the table. Postmarked 2004. Return address smudged. The letterhead, Washington State Adoption Board. But the contents were more disturbing than either of them expected. Due to procedural irregularities in the handling of case number 119B, the board was unable to provide identifying information for either child. A confidentiality agreement existed regarding the case. Breach of it could result in legal consequences for involved parties, including biological relatives. Emma read it twice. Her stomach churned. Procedural irregularities. Legal threats against a birth mother. This wasn't just bureaucracy. This was concealment. Carol leaned forward. She had spoken to other mothers, some in support groups, some who got their kids back. But this case, Emma and Alex's, was the only one where twins were separated and records completely sealed. Then Carol said something else. One name had come up in every place she searched: Margaret Donahue, Alex's adoptive mother, the woman who had raised him, loved him, protected him, the woman who might have known everything. Meanwhile, Alex sat across from Margaret in her dim kitchen. A pot of tea hissed softly on the stove, untouched. He needed to know the truth. Margaret had been quiet for a long time. Her hands fidgeted with the placemat. She whispered that she had tried to protect him. When they got the call about him, they were told his twin had already been placed. There had been a mix-up. The children needed to be separated for their own good. It wasn't optional. Margaret hadn't understood. When she asked questions, doors were shut. They had warned her never to go looking, never to ask. She had signed something. She hadn't been allowed to keep a copy. Alex's blood turned cold. She had suspected, especially when he turned 20 and began asking questions, but she thought it would destroy him, and she couldn't bear to lose him. Alex stood. The words had already left him. He walked out. Back in Tacoma, Emma sat in Carol's living room. The evening sun dipped low, shadows crawling across the floor. She picked up the Polaroid again. Baby A. She remembered the birth record. Baby B had been Jane Doe. Baby A had been John Doe, which meant Alex was baby A. and that made the decision even more calculated. Someone had chosen who to erase, who to hide, and for what. Carol reached into a drawer. There was one more thing, a folded note, yellowed with age, handwriting delicate. They'll come looking one day. If you're reading this, protect them. Someone wanted them separated, not just from me, but from each other. Find the name, Dr. Alden Kessler. Emma's heart dropped. Another name, another link. And just like that, the story widened. Who was Dr. Kessler? Why had someone gone to such lengths to separate the twins? And how far would they go to keep that truth buried? Truth. Where truth meets the past. History often reveals how carefully it was rewritten. Emma and Alex believed they found the beginning, with Dr. Alden Kessler, the intake officer named in Deborah's hidden notebook. But what lay beyond that name would expose systems more entrenched in deception than anyone imagined. Kessler's name appeared in their timeline as a mere figure in the paperwork, but digging deeper, both learned he wasn't just a case manager. He was a physician with a troubling history. Public records revealed Kessler faced serious ethical violations across 3 states. A convicted sexual offender, stripped of medical licenses in Massachusetts, New York, and Pennsylvania, due to acts of lewdness involving minors. His reputation hadn't faded, it had only shifted. By the late 1990s, he'd relocated, advertising discreet fertility and adoption services, capitalizing on the lack of regulation and the demand for anonymous birth mother placements. Emma and Alex sank into news articles, court files, and licensure revocation documents. The man once hired to assist vulnerable birth mothers was now linked to fertility fraud, misusing donor sperm, falsifying records, operating in legal grey zones. According to medical ethics groups, such cases, doctor using own sperm, are known as fertility fraud and have sparked legislation across states to curtail them. Could this man be at the center of their story? What they uncovered wasn't isolated. They learned of international adoption scandals in South Korea and elsewhere, where babies were declared stillborn, identities manipulated, records deliberately destroyed to obscure origin stories, much of it industry-powered, often in partnership with under-regulated agencies that prioritize demand over ethics. Emma and Alex realized their case fit a pattern often described as the boarding school scam, involving coerced or unconsented relinquishment, false documentation, and children separated irrevocably, sometimes never told the truth of their origin. They discovered scholarly works, showing how late discovery adoptees frequently experience profound identity crises, questioning every relationship, every memory, every concept of self, from the moment they learned the truth, years later. This wasn't just hidden history, it was deliberate erasure. Together, they traced thousands of documents. Kessler's expired medical license, falsified patient logs, financial records from New Horizons family transition services showing large cash payments to unnamed physicians, internal memos referencing confidential twin births with instructions to separate siblings and mark them Child A and Child B. No identifiers. It was all a facade. Emma and Alex confronted Judith and Carol again. Carol trembled when shown the memos. "I didn't know they had a full system behind it," she whispered. "I thought I'd slipped through a broken program. But this was built to hide." Judith, who once tried to help them, revealed tears, not relief. She admitted that when she tried alerting authorities of the irregularities decades ago, she'd been warned by lawyers to stay silent or risk being sued. The system had protected itself at every level: lawyers, physicians, agencies, even adoptive parents who had participated fully. Emma and Alex confronted their adoptive parents, 2 remarkably different reactions. Emma's mother, Diane, trembling but resolute. "They told me you were a citizen child. I had no idea, but I take responsibility for not looking deeper." Alex's mother, Margaret, broke down. "They told me you were Child A. That meant something. Even then. But they said I shouldn't look away. They threatened legal action if I did." The breakdown of shared reality was devastating. Both realized their lives had been built on lies, not ignorance but intentional construction. Now, they faced new questions. Can criminal charges be filed for fertility fraud, even after decades? Who else knew? Who profited? Can siblings separated by corporate bureaucracy reclaim their rights, reclaim their truth? They reached out to an attorney, specializing in fertility fraud and adoption law. She confirmed, in some states, even though the statute of limitations had passed, doctors like Kessler might still face civil suits if evidence could prove intentional deception. They filed a Freedom of Information request, court records tied to Kessler's activity between 1994 and 1996. They requested sealed records from the adoption board regarding twins and irregular cases. Some records came back intact. Others had been destroyed. They were blocked, delayed. Each denial felt like the final denial they feared. The system was still covering its tracks. Emma's journal entries grew darker. Today I found Mom's letter of grief from the 2004 Adoption Board review. Wording like procedural irregularities feels like a joke, like they buried us and called it choice. Alex isolated, avoiding old friends, ignoring messages, unable to return to his job. They held emergency therapy sessions together. Therapy confirmed what studies had shown. Late adoption discovery, secrecy, betrayal. It often leaves adoptees unable to trust even their own memories. Their trauma was layered, psychological, biological, historical. They found community support. From grown adoptees who had endured similar journeys, some discovered donor abuse, others found multiple siblings. Each story echoed theirs. Systems built to hide, and lives shattered when truth surfaced. Then, they received an anonymous email. Subject: "You're getting close." The body contained only one line: "Stop digging." Attached was a blurred photograph. A meeting room, a table, documents, one man's face. Not surprising. A likeness to someone they recognized. It sent a wave of dread through both of them. Emma and Alex realized they were no longer uncovering lost identity. They were stepping on dangerous ground. Their search threatened powerful people, surgeons, lawyers, networks of adoption agencies. Someone had left soup stains in old files for a reason. Someone had paid to destroy records and silence mothers. And now, they were watching them. The therapist's office becomes a quiet sanctuary, one that neither of them expected to seek, much less together. Emma and Alex sit side by side, eyes downcast, the gravity of their situation heavy in the air. They're no longer lovers, not quite siblings in any emotional sense, but not strangers either. Their story is no longer just theirs. It's become a reflection in the glass of something far bigger, something systemic. The therapist, calm and neutral, introduces the concept of ambiguous loss. What you're grieving, she explains, is the loss of something you never really had, and yet it feels like it was everything. It resonates, because how do you grieve a relationship that was never meant to be, but felt truer than anything else? Emma, once private and cautious, begins journaling, not for publication, not for pity, but because the confusion is too great to hold in her own head. Alex takes longer to speak, but when he does, it's with clarity. I didn't choose this, but I'm not going to run from it either. They meet again in a neutral space, not the apartment, not a place with shared memories, just a quiet diner on the edge of the city. They talk about their childhoods again, this time with fresh eyes. They reframe memories. Emma realizes a photo in her adoptive mother's old album shows a hospital nursery from the day she was born. There's another baby, another crib marked only Baby Boy AA. She never noticed before, but now she can't unsee it. Alex listens, stunned. His own records had a similar photo. Could it be the same room, the same nurse? Were they side by side from the very start, only to meet again by cosmic accident? They send the images to an investigator they'd previously consulted. He confirms the backgrounds. It's the same ward. They weren't just separated at birth. They were separated by design. Questions they had buried resurface. Why were they adopted out separately? Why were the records sealed? And who made those decisions? The investigator starts digging deeper, not just into birth records, but hospital archives. What he finds is troubling. A private agency, long defunct, known to have split twins in the 1980s and 90s, under the belief that separate adoptions reduced trauma. A well-intentioned idea, built on deeply flawed psychology. Some of the paperwork redacted, some destroyed. But one name appears on both their adoption files, Dr. Miriam Caldwell, a former agency counselor, who signed off on both placements. Is she still alive? The trail leads to a small retirement community, just outside Albany. They send a letter, no response. Then, weeks later, Emma receives a phone call. "I got your letter. I never imagined this would come back after so many years." The voice is frail, measured, but unmistakably burdened. Dr. Caldwell agrees to speak, with conditions, no recordings, no media, just a conversation. Emma and Alex drive up, hands trembling on the steering wheel. The meeting is held in a sunlit room, filled with dusty books and silence. Dr. Caldwell, now in her late 80s, sits hunched in a chair by the window. She recognizes their names immediately. She even remembers their birth mother. She was very young, scared, alone. I tried to help her the best I could. But why separate them? Dr. Caldwell hesitates. We believed it was kinder, that twins developed independence. We thought anonymity protected them, but we were wrong. The silence afterward is deafening. Emma doesn't cry, neither does Alex, but inside, something shifts. They're no longer angry, just exhausted. The damage was already done. In the weeks that follow, Emma starts connecting with other adoptees, quiet online forums, genetic search groups, private Facebook collectives. She shares her story, carefully, anonymously, and she's not alone. Others begin to message her. A woman in Colorado who discovered her father was also her uncle, a man in Michigan, whose DNA kit revealed 4 siblings he never knew. Each story painful, but each one a spark. Alex, meanwhile, chooses distance. He moves back home, takes time away from his job, and begins researching in solitude. He reads articles on identity reconstruction, trauma bonding, and even social taboos through history. They don't speak much during this time, but neither has disappeared. They're healing differently. And then, months later, Emma receives another message through the DNA platform. Another match. A woman, early 30s, close relative. She checks the details. The name isn't familiar, but the shared centimorgans are high, too high to be random. She messages back, cautiously. "Hi, I think we might be connected through a birth parent. Would you be open to chatting?" The woman replies, "I've been looking for you. My mom told me about a baby girl she gave up. She said she had twins, but I was only told your brother didn't survive." Emma's fingers freeze. Twins? Was there another? Before she can process it, her phone rings. It's Alex. "Emma, I got a new DNA match. Says she's a cousin, but something's off." They compare notes. It's the same woman. The connection doesn't make sense. Unless there were 3 of them. A hidden sibling, one who slipped through every record. The discovery that there might be a 3rd sibling sends shockwaves through Emma. She sits in silence for hours, the screen still open on her phone, the message from the stranger staring back at her like a ghost. "My mom said she had twins, but I was told your brother didn't survive." Emma rereads the message, again and again. Your brother didn't survive, but she knows Alex is alive, breathing, real. She's seen the records. She's seen his face. So what did the mother mean? Was there another brother? Or another sister? She and Alex start digging. Again. Back into the DNA, back into the mess. They scour the matches. They look for overlaps, connections. And slowly, a web begins to form. Distant cousins, shared third cousins, names that appear on both of their family trees, and hers. The new match, Rebecca, connected to them both. But the centimorgan levels don't lie. She's not a cousin, she's a sister, and not just a half-sister. Full DNA alignment. Same mother, same father. Emma stares at the numbers, as if they might suddenly rearrange themselves into something more rational. But they don't. They were triplets, and someone split them apart. Rebecca agrees to meet. She chooses a public space, a library, neutral ground. When Emma and Alex arrive, they recognize her immediately. The resemblance is uncanny. Same eyes, same jawline, the same shy tilt of the head when nervous. But unlike them, Rebecca knew, not everything, but enough. Her mother, still alive, had told her fragments over the years that she had siblings that she gave them up because she couldn't afford to raise 3 babies alone, that an adoption agency promised a better life, but never allowed contact. She believed her brother had died in infancy, that the girl was adopted far away. She was told not to ask questions, but now the truth sits in front of her, in the form of 2 living reflections, Emma, Alex, Rebecca, 3 strangers, 1 origin. They decide to confront the agency directly, but the agency no longer exists. Its records, swallowed by a tangled web of defunct corporations, mergers, sealed legal archives. A lawyer friend offers help. They file for a court order to unseal the files based on the new DNA evidence, but the request is denied. To protect the privacy of all parties, the court writes, protect privacy. From whom? The siblings? From each other? The decision feels like a slap. Another wall. Another silence. Emma doesn't stop. She returns to Dr. Caldwell, the elderly counselor who had admitted her role in the separation. This time she brings Rebecca with her. The old woman opens the door, slower than last time. Her eyes flicker between them, and for a second, it's as if she's seen a ghost. "There were 3 of you," she says, before they can even speak. Emma and Rebecca freeze. "I remember now. The hospital, they flagged your birth as high risk. Your mother was unconscious. No consent forms were signed. The state took custody immediately. There was pressure, political pressure, overcrowding. Twins were hard enough. Triplets, we weren't equipped. I made a call." Her voice cracks. "I thought I was giving you all a chance. I didn't know what we were taking away." But the damage, already written into their lives. Emma has nightmares now, not of what happened, but of what never had the chance to happen. Alex begins questioning everything again. The therapy had helped, but this new revelation resets the trauma, the uncertainty, the guilt. And Rebecca wants answers. She begins looking into her mother's past. What she finds? Deeply troubling. The hospital records show inconsistencies. Her mother was told she'd lost 1 baby, but the death certificate is a fake. The hospital never issued it. There's no record of burial, no coroner's signature. What does that mean? Did the agency fabricate the death? Was the child stolen? And if so, where is the 3rd child now? Emma, Alex, and Rebecca meet one last time, under the stars, outdoors, at a park far from the city, just to breathe. Alex says it first. "What if there's a 4th? They both laugh, nervous, hollow. But as the stars shift above them, the silence hangs too long. What if? What if the agency didn't stop at 3? A few days later, Rebecca gets an email from a user she doesn't recognize. The subject line, a string of numbers, coordinates. She clicks on the message. There's no text, no explanation, just an attachment, a grainy photograph of a hospital nursery, 3 cribs, but this time, 4 babies, 4 cribs. The photograph is old, the colors are faded, but it's unmistakable. Emma zooms in on the timestamp. August 2nd, 1998. It matches their birth date. The hospital ID code at the corner confirms the location. The same maternity wing where their mother gave birth. 3 cribs are tagged, 2 with numbers, 1 with a name. Baby girl Warren. The 4th has no tag. They trace the email header. It's encrypted, routed through several servers in Eastern Europe. Someone doesn't want to be found, but someone does want them to know. Emma sends a message back to the address. No reply. Rebecca posts the image anonymously on a genealogy forum under a subject line that reads, "Searching for a missing sibling born 1998, triplet or quadruplet." 2 weeks pass. Nothing. And then an anonymous comment appears beneath the post. "You're not looking for a sibling, you're looking for an experiment." Emma thinks it's a troll. But then Alex receives a package. No return address. Inside a manila folder, documents, reports, handwritten notes. At the center, a redacted case file from the late 1990s labeled Postnatal Developmental Separation Study, Group D. Group D triplets or quadruplets. Emma reads the file aloud. The program was run under the guise of a public health initiative overseen by a now-defunct private foundation. The aim? To study the effects of nature versus nurture by separating genetically identical children at birth and placing them in drastically different environments. Alex's breath hitches. They were lab rats. More pages. There were others. At least 14 children, possibly more. Multiple sets of twins and triplets, dispersed to foster families, adoptive homes, and state-run facilities. Follow-up assessments were conducted under the radar. School surveys, child welfare visits, gifted student programs, all secretly collecting data. The children never knew. Neither did the parents. Emma turns the page. A photo is stapled to the back. A little boy, maybe 4 years old. Blonde, pale, sunken eyes. Underneath it, someone has scrawled in pen. Subject 4D, location unverified, aggressive behavior, early separation protocol failed. She flips it over. Another scribbled note. Transferred, 2003. Destination redacted. Result, unstable. They now believe the 4th child was not stillborn. He was abandoned. Or worse, hidden. But where is he now? Rebecca calls in a contact. A journalist who specializes in black site investigations and private institutional abuse cases. He connects them to a whistleblower from the now-defunct foundation. The woman, now in her 60s, is cautious. She won't meet in person, only through voice-masking software. She confirms the program. She confirms that the mother of the quadruplets was pressured into a blind adoption, told her babies were at risk of developmental collapse if raised together. She was lied to. The whistleblower pauses before continuing. One of them wasn't supposed to survive. He didn't respond well to the formula trials. He was different. Emma clenches her fist. What do you mean, different? He didn't bond, didn't smile, didn't cry. They ran extra tests. When funding was cut, he was handed off to a subcontractor in Texas. Or maybe Kentucky. I was gone by then. Do you have a name? Silence. No, but I remember his code, 4D Sigma. Alex becomes obsessed. He posts online, digs through deep web archives, cross-references old clinical trial participants. And one day, he finds something. A juvenile correctional facility report from 2014. It lists a boy identified only as Sigma, admitted at age 16, history of violence, no known family. Transferred 2 years later after a violent outburst involving staff. His trail ends at a private psychiatric institution in upstate New York. The facility has changed names twice since. Emma and Alex fly out without telling Rebecca. The facility is remote, forests on all sides, no signage on the road, just a rusted gate and a buzzer. They lie at the intercom, claim to be journalists doing a piece on mental health reform. The gate opens. Inside, the building is grey and cold, sterile. They're met by a supervisor who agrees to speak briefly. No patients are visible. Alex shows the photo. The boy marked 4D. The supervisor's smile fades. He knows the face. We had someone by that name, Sigma. But we don't use names here. He was difficult, brilliant in some ways, but volatile. One day he just vanished. We assume he ran. You didn't report it. There was nothing to report. He wasn't in the system, no birth certificate, no ID. Legally, he didn't exist. Emma stares down the hallway, heart pounding. He could be anywhere. A week after returning home, Emma gets a voicemail from an unknown number. She plays it on speaker, a distorted male voice. "I've seen your posts. I know who you are. Don't look for me." A pause. "You think you want to find the last piece. You don't. Some stories were never meant to be complete." Click. No name, no caller ID, just silence. Weeks pass. Rebecca goes quiet. She's shaken. She deletes the genealogy forum post. Alex becomes withdrawn, distant. He stops answering calls. Emma begins dreaming about a boy she's never met. Same eyes, same blood. But in the dream, he's standing outside her house, watching, waiting. A final letter arrives. No stamp. Hand-delivered. No return address. Inside, "You were better off not knowing. I wasn't supposed to survive, but I did, and I remember everything." At the bottom there's a photo, a recent one. A man in shadow, standing at the edge of a cemetery. Behind him, 3 gravestones, but only 2 have names. The third is blank. Emma unfolded the letter again. She stared at the cemetery photo. 3 gravestones, 2 named, 1 blank. A man, half-turned, standing on the edge of memory. The words echoed in her mind. "I wasn't supposed to survive, but I did, and I remember everything." Her breath hitched, because remembering meant he knew. He remembered being separated, being disappeared, being labeled Sigma. She called Alex immediately. He was silent on the other end. Finally, he spoke softly. "I saw him once in a dream at my high school reunion. He was walking that same cemetery path." Emma's voice trembled. "That was me," she whispered. The final piece clicked into place, or perhaps shattered. It wasn't a dream, it was a memory. Emma texts Rebecca. No reply. She scrolls through old messages and sees Rebecca's last reply, "I can't do this anymore." Panic sets in. That night, Emma storms into Alex's apartment. Everything is perfect, until she notices the bedroom window is open. Too open. Houseplant tipped over. No note. No sign of Rebecca. But her phone is on the nightstand, unlocked. Emma swipes. The lock screen image. A photograph taken on Rebecca's birthday 9 years ago. All 3 together. Smiles forced, lights dim. She recognizes the building in the background. The now closed New Horizons Family Transition Services site. There's a message notification in the screenshots folder, "Goodbye, Emma." Her heart stops. Alex arrives with the envelope from their lawyer. It's the final ruling. The case files remain sealed. All data kept private under institutional confidentiality laws. Their attorney's note reads, "I'm sorry. The courts see this as an unpatented historical program. They refuse to release anything. Public interest doesn't override privacy." Their legal path is blocked, but now the urgency is personal. Rebecca is missing. Emma and Alex fly separately to the city where Rebecca last posted online, Denver. No forwarding address, just ghost images, archived usernames. Emma tracks her last known Wi-Fi login to a small apartment. She stands outside in a rain-slick alley. No response from the voicemail she leaves. Back in their shared home city, Alex files a missing person report. The police treat it as low priority. Her age, no history of foul play. But Emma refuses to wait. She calls the journalist again. He says he'll help. He tracks one last lead, a private shopper in the neighborhood where Rebecca lived. She remembers delivering groceries to a woman matching Rebecca's description, dressed in dark clothing, always hood drawn. Never spoke. Only once. She whispered, "They're still coming." Emma trembles. They review every piece of footage they have. Photos, document scans, videos. Nothing shows Rebecca leaving. Only a final frame in an old home video, Rebecca holding a teddy bear. The other twin, barely visible in the background, fading into the shadows. And then they receive another image, no context. Delivered to Emma's burner email, a Polaroid of a graveyard, 3 gravestones, 3 candles, the names Leah Ann Langston, John Eli Carter, and the third, only marked with 2 dates, no name. On the back, I'm closer than you think. They thought the story was finished. They thought justice might finally begin. But some truths remain buried, not in secrets, but in silence. And maybe the 4th child and the orchestrators of their fate are still watching. Emma sat on her floor, lights off, the Polaroid still in her hands. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. 1 text. They buried the name, but I remember it. She called back immediately. No answer. Another text. Check your mother's safety deposit box. Key was in the photo album. Page 37. Her hands trembled as she opened the album. Page 37. An old image of their mother at a hospital, holding a baby. Tucked in the binding, rusted, thin, aged, was a small brass key, stamped. First Pioneer Savings. 2 hours later, Emma stood at the dusty bank counter. The manager hesitated. No activity on the box in over 20 years. After some paperwork and a biometric scan, the vault door creaked open. Box No. 1231. Inside, a thick file folder, a VHS tape, and a blood-stained birth certificate. The name was smudged, but what was legible was the date, her birthday, and the name of the facility, Aurum Genetics Family Initiative. She raced back home and dusted off the old VHS player. She inserted the tape. Static buzzed. Then, a home video. A woman crying. Not their mother. A nurse speaking softly. You'll never have to remember this day again. We'll make sure of it. The baby was screaming. Then, a man's voice, firm, professional. Initiating memory partition protocol. Twins will be assigned separate trajectories. 1 to public integration, 1 to clinical retention, 3rd and 4th to waitlist. The screen flickered. The nurse nodded. They'll never know. Emma pressed pause. She sat in silence. She now had proof. Proof that there was a 4th child. Proof that memory was manipulated, that they were split apart not by fate, but by design. She called Alex, but his line was busy. Then he texted, Emma, I think I found her. Rebecca, but she's not the same. He sends a photo, blurry, dark, but unmistakable. A woman crouched near a fire pit in a forest clearing, her face pale, her eyes glassy. She wore a hospital bracelet. The name Langston, our date of admittance, last week. Emma drove through the night. Alex guided her using coordinates he received from a burner phone call. They arrived at the edge of Blackwood Pines. Silence. No signal. They followed the dirt path on foot. Branches snapped behind them. A distant hum, like a generator or something else. A clearing opened up, and there they saw it. A small wooden cabin, faint light inside, and near the door, Rebecca, rocking back and forth, muttering, "It wasn't supposed to be us, it was supposed to be him." They approached slowly, but she stopped and stared at them, her face blank, and then she said something that neither of them expected, something that didn't belong. "Are you here to finish what they started?" Emma knelt down. "Rebecca, it's me, Emma. We're here to take you home." Rebecca whispered, "Home. There's no home, only the lab, only the cycles. They're still running simulations." Alex frowned. "Simulations?" Rebecca looked him straight in the eyes. "You're not real. Not in this iteration." Suddenly the cabin door creaked open behind them. Out stepped a man in a lab coat. Elderly, thin, familiar. It was the man from the hospital video. He smiled. "Hello, children, welcome back." Alex stepped forward. "Who the hell are you?" The man raised a hand. "Let's not pretend anymore, Mr. Sigma." Emma's heart stopped. That name. You were never supposed to reunite, but the system glitched. You wandered outside your assigned paths. He looked at Rebecca. And she was never meant to remember, but trauma has a funny way of reactivating memory. Behind him, machines hummed. A wall of monitors flickered, showing dozens of other children, each labeled Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, Sigma, Omega, all with identical birthdays. The man stepped aside. Behind him, a room filled with files, photos, fingerprints, DNA strands mapped across the walls, Emma's photo, Alex's, Rebecca's, and another, someone else, a girl who looked just like Emma, slightly younger, different birthmark, name tag, Eleanor. Emma gasped. "Who is that?" The man smiled again. "You were a twin, Emma, but also part of a quadruplet system, one of two matched sets." He walked toward them. "And Eleanor, she's the last, the fourth, and she escaped." Alex pulled Emma back. Rebecca stood still, eyes wide. The man opened a drawer and placed a file in Emma's hands. It read, Project Solstice, Final Phase. 4 survived. 1 missing. Inside, test results, memory implantation logs, behavioral monitoring. Dates stretched back to the 90s. Emma flipped to the last page. A message scrawled in shaky handwriting. "The one you're looking for. She's watching you now." And at the bottom, a timestamp, only 2 hours ago. From Emma's apartment IP address. Emma and Alex sprinted back to the car. No cell service. They raced back to town in silence. At her apartment door, everything looked normal, but her laptop was open. On the screen, a live feed. A woman sitting in a motel room, face obscured by light. She looked up into the camera and smiled. Then she spoke. "Hello, Emma. We've never met, but I'm your sister, Eleanor, and I have something to show you." The screen went black. 4 cribs, 4 children split apart. One erased, one went silent, one vanished, and one just found them all. The truth wasn't hidden, it was engineered. And what happens next might never be told. Because some stories don't end. They loop, they rewrite, and they watch. And